Yo, what's up, guys? Back here at the Awesemo.com NBA strategy show. Just finished going over the first game. Now we're jumping into the Lakers and Miami game. Brought to you today by No House Advantage. So if you missed that first game, make sure to hit us up on our YouTube channel for that game, Charlotte and Golden State. But we left off where we were talking about how the Lakers are affected with Schroeder and Anthony Davis out. One guy that really seemed to benefit yesterday or the other day was Taylor Horton Tucker. And Adam, you were mentioning him a little bit, but I'm kind of looking at him today for value because he's 3,600. Saw pretty sizable minutes in the last game. And you were explaining a little bit that it was a little bit of a fluky rotation. So how does that all combine to how you're looking at Taylor Horton Tucker today?
Yeah, it was a little bit weird because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope subbed out after a minute 41 seconds in the third quarter, and Horton Tucker came in, played the rest of the third quarter, and about 2 minutes in the fourth quarter. Then he also got some garbage time run to add on to that. So, like, if you just go off the first half rotation for Horton Tucker, he only played 7.5, 8 minutes in the first half. And obviously, if he plays 16 minutes tonight, you're not going to be very happy, most likely, with the result. But I think the main point here is that there's no real certainty over who out of this Caruso, KCP, Matthews, Horton Tucker group gets the most minutes. A lot of it's going to be based on playing time, and they're similar per minute producers, for the most part. Caruso's 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. Matthews is less. Horton Tucker is a little bit more. KCP's around 0.6. But the point being, like, none of them are one fantasy point per minute guys. And a lot's going to come down to who gets those minutes. So ownership plays a big role for me in situations like that because I don't really know for sure who's going to happen to get those minutes in this game, but I do know that the minutes are available, and one or two of these guys are probably going to play 27 minutes. So I think that with them all being similarly priced, Caruso is the one that looks the best because I'm most confident in his minutes, and he averages 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. But you certainly can also see a Horton Tucker or a KCP at the similar price point be the guy that happens to have the best game out of the group.
Definitely. And Horton Tucker is a pretty good fantasy producer. So I think he's a nice value tonight, although a little bit risky with the minutes. KCP really does stand out as far as a low price tag for the minutes. He played about 28 minutes on the last game, but he what didn't play the last part of the game because it was a blowout. So that makes his minutes ceiling look pretty high compared to normal, where he's averaged about 25 minutes on the year, but with Schroeder out, that's opening up a lot of playing time for a wing or point guard. And KCP seems to be a guy that could benefit among others. So how confident do you feel like KCP is going to get a bump with Schroeder out?
I feel pretty confident there. Like you said, he played 29 minutes last game. He didn't get the minutes at the end in a non-competitive game, but also, as I mentioned before, he subbed out earlier than normal in the third quarter as well. So, like, if he's playing really poorly, then certainly you could get more Horton Tucker or more Matthews. But I think that at least the game plan going in is most likely for KCP to play 30, 32 minutes if this game's competitive. And while he does only average about 0.6 fantasy points per minute, when you talk about someone being near minimum salary on a slate where we have a lot of guys that we're going to want to pay up for and not a lot of very good value, it's just a situation where it's like, okay, even if I get 18 to 20 points, there's a pretty good chance that what that lets me get into the other spots in my lineup makes it worth it.
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a popular play tonight and a good value. Although, as you're saying, not a great permanent producer. And then finally, LeBron, I think with no AD or Schroeder, he's going to have to really dish the ball out a lot. Schroeder's assist percentage is 22%. Wesley Matthews is 8%. So what I'm projecting here is that LeBron's going to get a bump in assists. Do you think that he's going to be able to reach a different level of fantasy production with Davis and Schroeder out?
I think that you're right. This probably do go up for him. The thing that concerns me is that it's a relatively difficult matchup, and you have this Portland-Washington game that we'll get to later with guys to pay up for in that price range. So far this season, though, he has played 355 minutes without Davis or Schroeder on the floor. He's averaged 1.48 DraftKings points per minute, 41.5% usage rate. So the assists have been there, the production's been there, but at the same time, it's not like drastically better production than you get from him on average either. And that's what we've seen that in the past too, in games that Davis doesn't play. LeBron's rates go up a little bit, but his per minute production only gets a marginal increase. So I think he's a good play, but I'm not expecting him to be like, I'm not expecting a situation where like with Houston when Russell Westbrook wouldn't play, you basically just had to play James Harden in every lineup. I don't think it's that type of situation with LeBron.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of feel like it might be, but the price hasn't gone up yet. It's 10.2K on DraftKings, 10.5 on FanDuel. I do think the matchup versus Miami isn't the greatest, but I'm pretty confident that LeBron is a very good value tonight. It's just it might be tough to get to that top end guys, because there aren't a ton of bomb value plays today. Now on the Miami side, I'm not seeing a ton of value. The Lakers are a pretty tough team defensively, so Miami is only projected for 104 points, pretty low in today's NBA. But I mean, you gotta love the finals rematch, maybe a little bit of revenge for Miami. So the guys that have been getting the minutes have been Butler, Nunn, Hero, Bam, Duncan Robinson. I'd say they're all in play, but no one's really jumping out at me. What are you seeing at Miami?
Yeah, that's how I see it as well. They're all just pretty much priced where they should be. Jimmy Butler's been great since coming back from injury or COVID, whatever it was that kept him out. I think it was COVID. He's been great, and you're getting 35 plus minutes from him. Bam is about a 1.25 fantasy point per minute player as well. It's just that at their salaries they don't really stand out, because like taking DraftKings salaries for example, and just looking at the small forward position from guys that we've already talked about, you have Gordon Hayward for $1,500 less than Butler, if you need to save money, or you have LeBron for $1,300 more, playing without Davis and without Schroeder. So it puts him at a really awkward price point where, as good as Butler is, there are guys that just look a little bit better at his position. Same really goes for Bam. You're probably getting around 30 to 32 minutes from Nunn, 32 to 34 from Hero. They're both priced basically to play that many minutes as well, because they've been doing it for a while now. So there's just nothing that really looks great to me. It's more of just, if you have a chalky or tournament lineup and you need a lower owned piece, you can certainly go here because the pricing is going to keep them from being overly popular. And they do have high ceilings. It's just they don't really grade out as particularly good plays, I don't think.
Agreed. Yeah. So is there any one player in particular that you might look at as a contrarian play tonight?
I don't think so. Like there's not one that really stands out. I think that, as always, Butler and Bam would be the ones you want to get to the most. Hero and Nunn in their price ranges give you a pretty nice ceiling, but there's no like one guy that I'm looking at and saying, oh, I hope he's low owned because I really want him.
Same. Yeah. I think this one is probably one of the less appealing games tonight. So let's go to Phoenix and Memphis. Before we do, guys, since we had to restart the stream, if you could hit that like button again, that'll help us out a lot. Apologize for some of those issues with the lag, but hopefully a little bit better now. Also, we have a lot of great tools behind the paywall at Awesemo.com. So you can get the weekly pass for all sports for $29.95. What you're getting projections, ownership projections, range of outcomes data that I'm using to build all my lineups each night to try to win all these GPPs. I think there's a lot of value there. Or if you're just an NBA player, you can get it for $16.95 a week. So hit us up at Awesemo.com. All right, next game we got is Phoenix and Memphis. So I'd say Memphis is one of the weaker teams defensively, just a really young squad. And Phoenix should be in a good matchup here. They have a fully healthy squad as far as we know. The one thing that seems to be in flux is who's starting. Last game, it was Kaminsky. The game before that, he didn't even play. So who would you expect to start this one?
I'm expecting Kaminsky. They had said previously that it was matchup based why Kaminsky wasn't playing. I think I'm going back to look who they had played before. Played Orlando, played Philly. Assuming that Memphis goes with Brandon Clark, I would assume that Kaminsky plays for Phoenix.
Fair enough. Yeah, not really a DFS play because he's gotten his price up and he doesn't close usually, but something to keep note of, because if Cameron Johnson or Jay Crowder started, that'd be a little bit of a bump. What about the rest of the Phoenix team? Because even though I think the matchup's good, like the pricing looks pretty tough on these guys, so I'm not seeing a ton of value here.
Yeah, same boat, kind of similar to Miami. Obviously a better matchup, a much higher total, but similar as far as plays that I think are fine in tournaments. They have high ceilings, but they're not going to grade out as the number one option at their position or at their price point. I still think DeAndre Ayton is a little bit underpriced for his upside. He's averaged over a fantasy point per minute this year. You're typically getting 33 and a half, 34 minutes from him now. He's only 6,800 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's 6,600. So like even if he just has an average game, he's going to give you a decent, a pretty good score for his salary, and he certainly has the potential to do better. So I think a little underpriced there. Chris Paul and Devin Booker, both guys that are hurt by the other's presence. Booker around a 1 fantasy point per minute player this year with Paul. Paul's at about 1.15 fantasy points per minute with Booker. They're both obviously Devin Booker, but it's not the most likely outcome here. And the most likely outcome is that they kind of just are mediocre for their salaries, I think.
Agreed. Yeah. Especially with some of the other games, they're standing out as maybe a team to fade unless we get more information. On FanDuel, the pricing is a little bit better, and Aiden looks pretty solid. But man, I feel like he hasn't been able to really take a jump year over year. It's been a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, he's been disappointing as far as expectations go this year. It's just that I think that the salary has more or less adjusted now. Like if he gets much lower in salary, he's going to just start being like 30% owned every slate. So I think he's pretty much where he should be for his median projection, but he still has the upside for, those 15 point, 15 rebound double doubles occasionally.
Definitely, yeah. On the Memphis side, we had D'Anthony Melton come back yesterday, as well as Bain, but Dylan Brooks was out, so that opened up some opportunity. However, this game he's questionable, so we're gonna have to take 2 stabs at this one. If Brooks is in versus out, if he's in, I'm not really seeing a ton of value here, especially given it's a little bit of a tough matchup. What are you seeing?
Yeah, there's nothing that I really love. John Morant's salary jumped a few $100s since last night. Valanciunas is still a decent value. Those would be the two that I look to regardless. I do think they're both better if Brooks is out, just because that's a 26% usage rate that disappears. But either way, I mean, if you get 34, 35 minutes from John Morant, he can go get you 50 fantasy points. If you get 28 to 30 from Joe Val, he'll get you, 35, 40 fantasy points. But it is a slow Phoenix team. It's not the best matchup. There are the 2 games we haven't talked about yet are both extremely appealing as well, in terms of pace and lack of defense. So it makes it kind of hard to prioritize this one, I think.
For sure, yeah. So if Brooks is out, then last night we saw Brandon Clark get the start, and then he played big minutes. He had 34 minutes and pretty decent fantasy points, 12 points, and then 10 peripherals. So tonight he's 5,500 and 5,800 on FanDuel. Would you say he's the primary beneficiary if Brooks sits?
Yeah, I think so, because with Clark, the thing is, there's a lot of times where like he slides into the starting lineup and he ends up being over-owned because people don't seem to take into account that he loses rebounding when he's playing next to Valanciunas. But with his price where it is right now, getting those extra minutes, I think, is more important than losing some per minute production. Last night, you also got him. He wasn't the backup to Valanciunas per se, but he did get some minutes without Valanciunas on the floor, which makes him more productive as well. But at that price tag, like if you're going to get 30 plus, last night he played 33.8. If you're going to get 30 plus minutes from Brandon Clark, I don't really care that he goes from 1.1 fantasy points per minute off the bench to like 0.9 fantasy points per minute with Valanciunas.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a good point where the per minute production next to Valanciunas isn't quite as good, but the minutes should more than make up for that, especially if they follow the rotation from last night where he played that many minutes. So you'd also expect if Brooks is out, maybe John Morant or Joe Val as the highest usage guys on the team should benefit, because going from Brooks to Brandon Clark, there's about a 7% usage gap between those guys. So who do you expect to take some extra shots in that?
Yeah, I expect Morant to get more shots up, Valanciunas, to get some as well. But I think Morant will be the main beneficiary. We've seen his usage rate go up in the past without Brooks. One other just weird thing to point out. And I don't think it's super relevant because Kyle Anderson's really expensive regardless. But Brooks being out, I think actually hurts Kyle Anderson, which may seem counterintuitive. But his one of the big reasons Anderson's been better this year from a DFS standpoint has been the increased rebounding numbers he's gotten from playing a lot of power forward. If you're putting him in the lineup alongside Valanciunas and Clark, as opposed to just alongside Valanciunas, a lot of those rebounds are disappearing, and he's not going to be the highest usage guy regardless of who's on the floor. Like, it's not like Dylan Brooks goes out and Kyle Anderson's suddenly a 25% usage guy. So he really needs those peripherals. And if you're taking away the rebounds, you already have John Morant back taking away the assists. It makes it an even worse spot for Anderson.
Yeah, slow-mo. He had a good run, but the situation isn't shaping up that great at his current salary tonight. Guys, we're going to be giving out 30 weekly passes when we reach 30K Twitter followers. Make sure to hit us up at Awesemo_com. Give us a follow. And then we also have a podcast network, awesemo.com/podcast. So if you like listening to these streams in podcast form, we got everything on there, excluding live before locks. So make sure to check that out. Also, we did a survey and 80% of you guys said getting the best odds on bets is important to you. So we have the tool oddshopper.awesemo.com where you can get the best line available for your state. So make sure to check that out. We also added a new feature where you can see our projected ROI for prop bets. So that's one of the more beatable markets. I think it's a pretty cool feature. Sacramento at Chicago. You're mentioning you think the last two games have some good values. Set this one up. Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes are questionable today. That's going to make it a little bit tough to predict who's going to play. So let's talk about the team if everyone's healthy, and then we'll break down who Holmes being out would benefit and Barnes.
Yeah, so if everybody's healthy, then obviously that's kind of like worst case scenario for DFS, because this is a slate where we would like there to be some value. Rashawn Holmes, if he plays around 30 minutes, it's a decent spot for him. 5,700 on DraftKings, I think, is reasonably appealing. On FanDuel, he was a little bit more expensive, I think. 6,400, but still wouldn't be a priority for me, I don't think. If Harrison Barnes is out, last game you got Glenn Robinson starting in his place. Robinson played 23 minutes. Nemanja Bjelica could start for Barnes. Last game, Bjelica and Robinson both started with Barnes and Holmes out. Bjelica started, played 35 minutes. If Bjelica is in the starting lineup for one of these guys, he's going to look like a pretty good option. His salary came up to 4,700 on DraftKings, but he's about a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. So if he gets the minutes, he's still fine. But I think that it could just be Robinson starting if like Holmes is in and Barnes is out. So it is still going to be really lineup dependent, and Luke Walton likes to screw with his lineup. So probably going to just need to wait to know for sure there.
Definitely, yeah. A little bit tough, but Bjelica's price has gone up since the other day where he had a big game. I'm a little bit worried about him because he wasn't even in the rotation at the start of the year. So I feel like the minutes last game were a little bit fluky, but do you think he earned a bigger role?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to say. Like even if you look at his recent games, he played 27 minutes with I don't know. I think Bagley or Holmes was out like 2 games ago.
Out.
Yeah, played 3 games ago. Played 27 minutes. Same situation the next game. He played 5 minutes, and then he gets the start. So my general feel for Bjelica, especially now that the salaries come up, if he starts, he's a risky play, but he's a very reasonable play. If he comes off the bench, I'm just running the other direction because like. One, you would need him to produce at a really high rate to justify the salary, assuming he's going to play like 26 minutes instead of 34. But also, there's enough bodies on Sacramento that he could just not really be in the rotation here, and it wouldn't be the most surprising thing. So if he starts, you at least know he's getting opportunities. If he comes off the bench, I really want nothing to do with him.
I agree. Yeah, Bjelica off the bench is probably a no-go for me. This game starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, so it's an hour after the first game. So that does make it tough to make Bjelica a priority tonight when building lineups, unless we get some news about Bagley and Holmes being out. So, Barnes and Holmes. Bagley is back. So Bagley was interesting. He had the minutes limit last game, but it didn't seem to stop him. But okay, so if Holmes is out, Bagley got to start at center for the last couple of games. Do you think that improves his fantasy value?
Yeah, I think it does. he's been on a minutes limit. He played 21 minutes in the first game, played 24.3 last game, but he didn't play it all in the fourth quarter. It looks like a situation where Miami had a really big lead, and then the second unit sort of kind of went on a run, and Luke Walton just really never brought most of the guys back in. De'Aaron Fox played a few minutes in the fourth quarter, but Bagley never came back. Hield never came back. So I think that you could get like 28 minutes from Bagley. One of the beat reporters for Sacramento prior to last game had said that Bagley was still limited, but that his estimate was 24 to 28 minutes. So I think that at his salary, if he's still starting at center, those are productive minutes. And it's also not like you expect Whiteside to have to take minutes from Bagley. Like if this were a game against Joel Embiid or something, it would just be like, okay, like Whiteside's going to have to step in because Bagley can't handle this. But Wendell Carter Jr., not the same type of center. So I think that Bagley should be able, if he starts at center, to play his full allotment of minutes at the position.
Nice. That would be something to target for sure. And then Whiteside's been a lot pretty disappointing as chalk recently. His salary has still gone up. He's not getting the minutes. He's been getting around 14 to 18 per game with these guys out. So do you see any appeal with Whiteside?
If he's low owned in tournaments, I think there's appeal just because the minutes are extremely volatile. Like if nobody's going to play, like, so the thing is, if Whiteside plays 24 minutes somehow, like Bagley gets in foul trouble, Whiteside plays really well, whatever, just a weird rotation in general, he's most likely going to just absolutely destroy a $4,800 price tag. The problem is that the most likely outcome is that he plays like 14 minutes, 14, 16 minutes, especially because Chicago is a team that they don't need his size against the backup unit either. It's not like they have a center that they need him out there for at all. So you very easily could get a game or a rotation just like you got against Miami, where Bagley starts, Whiteside backed him up basically in the first half, didn't, and then played like 3 minutes in the second half. So the one thing about his rotation against Miami that's kind of weird is that it seems like it kind of just turned into garbage time and he lost a few minutes, but still probably would have only played like 18 minutes or something like that. So even if you get 18 to 20 minutes from Whiteside, he has a high ceiling, but he's most likely going to disappoint at 4,800.
For sure. Yeah. Pretty risky regardless of who's in and out. One guy I'm into is De'Aaron Fox. He just looks like a solid play. And if guys are out, even better. How do you feel tonight with Fox?
I really like Fox. I don't really know what's going on with his DraftKings price tag, or his FanDuel price tag. He's down to 8K on DraftKings, 8,100 on FanDuel. Pretty sure he was 8,800 on DraftKings last time he played. And it's not like he's bad or having a bad year or anything. Like he plays 34, 35 plus minutes as long as the game's competitive. He's averaging 1.2 fantasy points per minute. Like on average, he's going to get you 40 plus fantasy points in normal games. And then now you get a favorable matchup against the Bulls. Harrison Barnes, if he's out, it's not like he's a high usage guy, but he still contributes enough to where, replacing him with someone like Bielitsa or even better, Glenn Robinson is going to create more usage and more assist opportunities too. So it just seems like a really good spot for De'Aaron Fox.
I agree. On the Chicago side, Sacramento is one of the teams that I love to target because they don't play very good defense. They have one of the worst defensive efficiencies in the league. And that sets up pretty well for Levine, who you were pointing out yesterday, has been incredible this season. His true shooting percentage is up to 64%, and he has 31% usage. So that's really making a difference for the Bulls this year. How do you feel about him tonight?
I love him here. The only issue is just like the guard positions are absolutely stacked on this slate. We talked about Steph before. We talked about LaMelo. We just talked about De'Aaron Fox, who's $1,200 less on DraftKings. We still have a Portland game that has obviously really, really good guard plays. So that alone will sort of keep exposures in check and probably keep ownership down. But it is a pretty bad Sacramento defense, and Levine just has been really, really good. He's seen his usage go up without Lauri Markkanen as well by a few points. So it's a situation where, I think there's still some sticker shock maybe when people look at, a 9K plus price tag on Zach LaVine, but I think it's completely warranted. Like the guy plays massive minutes. He's averaging almost 1.4 fantasy points per minute. His per minute production isn't drastically different than Steph Curry. And he's almost $1,000 cheaper on DraftKings. So I really like LaVine. It's just a matter of, how much can you get to when you're also having to roster so many other really good guards on this slate.
Nice. I feel like he's really reached a new level this season. So A nice play there. What about the rest of the Bulls? Is anyone jumping out at you?
I think Wendell Carter Jr. looks like a good value. I know you and I had talked about it before. I guess yesterday, that his minutes seem to be trending up. He had played 27 minutes or so 2 games ago. Yesterday he played 25 minutes at the last 4 minutes of the game in basically garbage time, or they just subbed him out. But either way, played 25 minutes yesterday. So like if you're expecting at least 25, 26 minutes from him, certainly could get more. And it's a really favorable matchup against the Kings team that not only has just been bad overall defensively, but has been incredibly bad defending in the paint. If Rashawn Holmes is out and you're getting Marvin Bagley there, it's even better for Carter, I think. So at 5,100 on DraftKings, I think there's some value there.
Awesome. Yeah, I like Carter as well. Especially if it looks like Thaddeus Young has kind of gotten a bigger role in the rotation, but last game he didn't play quite as much as I was expecting. So maybe Carter can get some of those minutes back as he gets healthier. Let's go to the last game here, Washington at Portland. I know you're the big Wizards fan, so tonight it looks like with the fully healthy squad, everyone is priced up a little bit. But who would stand out as a priority tonight for DFS?
Yeah, I mean, with the Wizards in general, it's obviously just Westbrook and Beal are the two that stand out. They're expensive, but I think that there's clearly still a high ceiling for them. And I don't think that because they are expensive, I don't think they're going to grade out as like the top options. So it will be appealing just to get to them, in this game as, a mini game stack or something like that if you can. Beal in games with Westbrook this year, still averaging 1.35 DraftKings points per minute, leads the league in scoring, plays 35, 36 minutes in competitive games. Westbrook is still triple doubling pretty much every game. He's not been great from a real life standpoint because he still can't shoot, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's been very productive in playing big minutes as well. Portland, not very good defensively. So I think both of those guys stand out as, really high upside options. Davis Bertans seems to, I mentioned it earlier when we talked about Oubre, but he started out shooting really poorly this year. But he's clearly turned it around, set a career high last game in 3-pointers. Not that you're expecting that same sort of production, but I think it just goes to the point where his production this year has been down because of poor shooting, but you're not expecting that to continue. I think that at 5,600 on DraftKings, he's more expensive than I want to pay, but still 4,700 on FanDuel, and most likely playing around 30 minutes here if this game's competitive against a team that doesn't defend well. I think that it's still a pretty reasonable value on a slate that doesn't have a lot.
Definitely, yeah. Bertans on FanDuel, he's a lot cheaper than DraftKings, so that's a nice one to know. And then Westbrook's a lot cheaper on FanDuel as well, so that would be a spot I'm looking at, 9,200. That would be his price last year, but on this team, he's doing a lot more, so I like him on FanDuel. On the Portland side, I mean, most of the guys have gotten back to full strength here. It was a little shorthanded for a little bit, but last game, Rodney Hood came back, and that kind of reduced some of the minutes for the rotational guys. But Dame Lillard, Covington, and Trent, as well as Cantor, they seem to be getting the minutes here with the team in its current state. So, who would jump out at you tonight?
Dame and Cantor are the first two. Lillard just has such a massive ceiling when he plays without CJ McCollum. On average, he hasn't produced at quite the same rate this year without him as he did last year, but he's shown in recent games, that he still has that 70-point upside, and his production still has gone up without McCollum. Now you get one of the best matchups in DFS, the fastest team in the league, one of the worst defensive teams in the league, and Lillard, playing huge minutes as well. This just strikes me as the type of game that turns into a back and forth between Lillard and Westbrook or Lillard and Beal, and you just get a monster game from Lillard. The Wizards also not a very good rebounding team, and Enes Kanter, while he can score some points, most of his DFS value comes from rebounding. I think that he has a good chance to have success here. Washington, I haven't looked recently, but the last time I looked, Washington actually had been really good, for lack of a better word, at preventing offensive rebounds. But it's not because they rebound well. It's because the teams that they play shoot really well. So, Cantor basically can lose some value just because the Blazers might not miss enough shots. But if they do miss shots, Cantor's getting rebounds. He's getting putbacks in this matchup. So I think he looks good. And then Covington and Trent sort of as secondary options. The last time these two teams played, like I don't put much stock into film and stuff like that for DFS, but I do specifically remember it. Like they were just leaving Gary Trent wide open the entire game. And So it's not like, oh, Gary Trent shot better than normal. Gary Trent was just getting like warm up threes the entire game. And he is still playing big minutes. So, certainly someone that you could look to in tournaments. Robert Covington should get more rebounding opportunities without Harry Giles as well. So I think this is a spot where he can benefit too, but the priorities are clearly Dame and Enes Kanter.
Agreed. Yeah, those are the guys standing out to me with the nice offensive matchup here. Now on FanDuel, everyone is way cheaper than on DraftKings, so that's changing it up a little bit. Enes Kanter is 6,200. He looks like he might be one of the top centers of the slate, and then Lillard's only 9,900 compared to 10.6 on DraftKings. I think 10.6 is closer to where he should be, and he has over the last 5 games we've been seeing the bump to usage and assists we'd expect with McCollum out. So that's been nice. He got a little bit slow start on that, but it's been picking up. Now, what about the other guys on the team? Anthony Simons, Carmelo Anthony, Rocco, any interest?
Not really. I just don't. I'm not. Well, Rocco, I do. Because he's getting backup center minutes. He's playing a lot of minutes when Cantor's not on the floor, and his rebounding percentage when he's played this year without any of the centers is up around like 12-13%, which for him obviously is important. And then also he's probably going to get some wide open threes against the Wizards, and he's playing huge minutes. So I do have interest there. Carmelo's tougher because like I expect him to be productive when he's on the floor. I just don't have a lot of confidence in his minutes. Anthony Simons, basically the same thing. Like it's tough for me to expect more than 20, 21 minutes from him. If he gets to 24 or 25 though, he probably ends up being a good value. So I would throw Anthony Simons in the mix with like Alex Caruso, only 3,900 on DraftKings. I don't think that they're like drastically different plays. Derek Jones Jr. is really cheap too if you need a Ford value. Certainly not the most productive player though. And with Rodney Hood back, there is one more person in the rotation that potentially could squeeze his minutes.
Definitely. Yeah. Simons, he's been getting pretty consistent minutes over the last 5 games, and Hood hasn't seemed to affected that a ton. I think he's a decent value, as you're saying, kind of in that Caruso range, where I need some of these guys that are coming off the bench to really get the studs in tonight. So, like him. Final thoughts on the slate. A nice little 5-gamer, late start time. Oh, how do you think this one's going to play out?
It looks really fun. I think it's going to be a situation where you end up having to just roster some value that doesn't feel very good, assuming we don't get injuries between now and then. But I think it's going to be a really fun one because the last couple games of the slate should be really high scoring.
Awesome. I hope you're right, man. Like, and maybe some less crazy outlier performances, so that your whole night doesn't revolve around having one guy. That's what I'm rooting for here. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the NBA Strategy Show. We got a lot of DFS content coming at you today. So first, we got the NASCAR show covering tomorrow's race. That's at 12 p.m. Eastern with Jason and Phil. NHL, Jake and Cliffy are our guys on that one at 3 p.m. And then behind the paywall, we got Terry McBride talking some NBA DFS about how you can use the tools on the site to really build a strategy. He